Hi guys, welcome back to the Travel World Summit. Today we are with Jared of Nomadasaurus.com. And before we're going to talk all about adventure traveling, I just wanted to first say, Jared, thank you for taking time to be a part of our travel summit.
No, thank you very much for having me. Excited to be a part of it.
Cool. Well, before we do get into the conversation of adventure traveling, can you just give us a little brief background about yourself and, how did you get started and very excited to start, just traveling the world?
Well, like you said, my name's Jared. I've been travelling the world since about 2007. Left home in Australia when I was 20. Moved to Canada on a work and holiday visa and got right into snowboarding and rafting and a bunch of different outdoor activities. And during that time, I met my partner Alicia, and she's right into adventure activities as well. We bought a van, travelled across Canada for 3 years, living out of that. Explored Central America, just spent the last 2.5 years crossing Asia by land without taking a single flight. And traveling was just something that's always kind of grabbed a hold of me and grabbed a hold of Alicia as well. And it's something that's just really ingrained in our lives now. Something we can't imagine not having a part of our lives. So yeah, it's a little bit about me, I guess. And yeah, why I love traveling as well is just it's such a great way to enjoy life and great way to experience all these cool different places around the world.
Right, yeah, that's awesome, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And I think one of the kind of traveling that you guys do focus on is kind of adventure traveling. So, can you just kind of talk to those that might not know what is adventure traveling, and how does it work, and how is it different compared to other forms of traveling?
Yeah, no, the funny thing with adventure travel is there's no set kind of definition of it. I mean, everyone's got different ideas of what it could be. Some people might think that going on a week-long vacation to somewhere like Guatemala is considered adventure travel, and there's nothing wrong with thinking that. Don't get me wrong; like everyone's got their own opinion. But the way we consider adventure travel, and I think that a lot of people who do this full time or have a passion for it, is more long-term, in-depth kind of journeys and adventures where you're trying to achieve something. So, like the most classic example, I guess, could be climbing Mount Everest. That could be considered one of the highest forms of adventure travel. And some people might consider something like skydiving in Switzerland or New Zealand to be adventure travel. Now, us personally, we don't really consider that to be adventure travel because the whole concept of what you are trying to achieve is out of your hands. You're giving your trust and allowing someone else to kind of guide that for you. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, like the definition of adventure travel would be more like if you're going to cycle from, LA to New York on your own, or if you're going to try and whitewater raft, through parts of the Amazon. The way that adventure travel is different to normal travel, I think, is you have more of usually a physical kind of achievement you're trying to get, an accomplishment, can be mental as well. But it's something that you actually got to put a lot of time and effort in, and there could be an element of danger in it as well. It's not something that you can just kind of jump on Google and be like, oh, I'm going to book this cool, awesome tour leaving next week and then not have to think about anything. Adventure travel is really about thinking about the journey you're on and what you're doing and how you can achieve it and having to be constantly kind of, chopping and changing your plans as well. So I guess, yeah, just having a goal in mind is something you want to achieve. It can be anything, really. But I think that's a bit different to going to an all-inclusive resort in Cuba or something like that.
Right, right. So let's say that if we're just, starting off our traveling experiences, would you recommend us to, is it okay if we're going to want to go on an adventure travel, or is that something that we need to build up on and, get some more experience of just traveling in general first?
No, I don't think you need to get experience first. A lot of people just kind of dive headfirst into whatever idea they have. Like someone could be sitting at home, could be working full time, 9 to 5, never done anything too adventurous and go, screw it, I'm going to get a bicycle, I'm going to ride to Patagonia. And they don't need experience doing it. Obviously it helps, but it's something that you'll pick up as you go. As long as you don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Like you're not going to be able to summit K2 without training and guidance and building up experience for that. But there's all kinds of adventure travel you can do. Like Alicia and I, for example, we landed in Laos and we crossed into Laos, and we bought 2 motorbikes with no riding experience at all. And we then spent the next 10 months riding motorbikes around Southeast Asia, 15,000 kilometers. Before that day we bought them, we had no idea how motorbikes worked, how to ride them. It's something that you can just kind of fall into. Trekking is another great example. If you want to trek the Annapurna circuit, you don't necessarily need to go and do a weekend here and then a weekend there and then a week here and a week there. People just land there and do it. So it's not something you really need to, I guess, build up for. It does help though.
Awesome. Yeah. So, okay. So let's say that, we're all in, we're very excited. We want to go on an adventure travel destination. Can you tell us, where do we start? Like, where do we start researching, or, how do we plan our adventure trip?
Talking to people, and of course Google is a great one. Travel blogs as well, if you can come across anyone that's done something similar. National Geographic used to always be the pinnacle for adventure travelers before the whole online thing kind of took off. I remember flicking through Nat Geo magazines when I was a kid, and getting inspiration for that, wanting to go to all these far-flung places. But yeah, just if you have an idea, jump on Google, see what you can find, try and find some travel bloggers. Reach out to people as well that have done it and gather whatever kind of information you can get.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So if we're just starting off, can you just name a couple travel places that you could recommend for us to maybe do a little bit more research, and also for the more advanced travelers, can you kind of share some tidbits on some cool places that they might not know of, that could be some cool spots they can go on for their next trip?
Yeah, if you're looking to get into adventure travel and you've never done anything like this before, you don't have to go too far to get into it. I mean, there's tons of adventurous stuff you can do in the United States, or you can do in Australia. You don't have to necessarily travel abroad to go and do these adventure travels. Pacific Crest Trail, for example, Annapurna in Nepal, Everest Base Camp. It sounds very hectic and it does require some training, but it's the kind of thing that you could just arrive in Nepal and do yourself. Central America is a nice place to kind of get into adventure travel. Southeast Asia in particular as well for motorbiking has become quite popular recently. If you want to do something more advanced, regions that we've really fallen in love with, like Mongolia, Central Asia as well, the stands are really good for hiking and full driving and rafting and a lot of camping as well, and hitchhiking and that kind of style of adventure travel. And then if you're on another level, then things like Central Africa and West Africa are kind of what the next level is, I guess. And again, but you don't have to go too far to find the most incredible adventures. I mean, go to Alaska and there's tons. Yeah, it depends what you're into, I guess. But Southeast Asia, for example, is a great place to start.
Sweet. And you were talking about previously about the research. We can just go on Nat Geo, Google, etc. Can you just talk about how we can also get inspiration for where we want to go? You've named so many different places. How can we narrow it down to 2 or 3 spots? It sounds like every single spot is a great destination, but if we only have a few weeks, how can we really narrow it down and pick the place that would be best for our personality and just getting started?
Well, that's a difficult question because it really comes down to what you're personally into and what your idea of what you want to achieve on a few-week holiday is. If you're based in the United States, for example, then consider going to, if you only got a few weeks, consider going to Mexico, Guatemala, or Nicaragua and doing some trips around there, or maybe even Peru, Ecuador and Colombia. There's some really cool hikes and stuff you can do there. That's a bit closer and something you can really kind of tackle in a short vacation period. If you're looking at coming from the southern hemisphere, like Australia and New Zealand, for example, if you want to go abroad outside of your own country, I'd pick somewhere like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, or India and Nepal would be some great options. And then if you're in Europe, somewhere like the Balkans, it'd be really cool. You got Turkey, Iran. So it really depends on where you are and kind of what you're looking for. But again, you can look in your own country and find all kinds of cool adventures. I would love to do some hiking all through the United States as well and hitchhike across the country. And so there's you don't have to look too far. Just pick somewhere close to start with.
Yeah, that's always easier to maybe start local and then build your your way up. And you're talking about a lot of cool stuff like hiking, high terrain areas and kind of adventure traveling, probably a lot of like adrenaline junkies like love to do this kind of stuff. But let's say that, we do have a 9 to 5 job, and, maybe we're trying to get out of our job, or we just want to like a fresh start. And, we're not the most adventurous or, spontaneous individual. And we get a little nervous. Like, we've never gone bungee jumping before or skydiving. Is there any like advice or tidbits you can give us for us to like, maybe like quote unquote get out of our comfort zone and to have the confidence to pursue this kind of travel that you've been talking about so far?
Yeah, if you really want to ease into it, and you are a little bit nervous about, for example, landing in Vietnam and buying a motorbike and riding across the country, then something that you can do if you got weekends, hiking is such a great way to kind of build up your confidence into doing that. And I don't just mean like going for a 2-hour hike in your local park or nature reserve. I mean like packing a tent, your own food, and just start off with like one night going into national park, going for a hike and just camping. And like again, one night, like anyone can survive one night as long as you're not doing it in the middle of winter or you're not doing anything too ridiculous in some places. So that's a great way to do it. Starting off with just like a one night hike or a 2-night, like 2-day, 1 night, etc. hikes. If you want to get into something like cycling, which is a great, like we've got friends who've cycled all around the world. Pick a town that's not too far away, 100 mile or something, and go, I'm going to ride there, and it might take me like 2 days. I'm just going to stay in like a little guest house on the way, and then you just take a bus back to your hometown after that, or organise for someone to pick you up. And that's a great way to kind of get into it, because then you're never too far from home. You've still got that security that, well, if something goes wrong, I'm not on the other side of the world. I'm literally just a few hours from home. Everything will be sweet. And that's a great way to kind of ease into it. Get into things like scuba diving. That can be really good for a lot of people who've got this like intense fear of the ocean, for example. If you do some scuba diving, just your open water course to kind of get into it, that can really help calm people's nerves, because that's a great example of something that really freaks a lot of people out. And then when they do it, they go, oh, it's actually awesome. It wasn't as bad as I thought. So getting into, like, you can pick these really easy ways to get into it. And even if you do only have one day, for example, you've only got your Sunday because you work 6 days a week, try and book into like a whitewater rafting excursion or something that will take all day, and you're going to be out in nature and your adrenaline's going to be high, but you're not completely out of control. There's someone looking out for you as well, and that can help kind of boost your confidence. And eventually, when you do have a bit more time, or you got a couple more weeks for a vacation, or you do end up quitting your job and traveling full time, you would have had these experiences leading up, so that you personally know, I can survive 2 days hiking. That's fine, And so I think that's a great way to do it. Just kind of pick places close by and build into it.
Yeah, definitely. Just it's all about easing in. You don't want to overdo it yourself. So. Can you talk about, endurance and training and cardio? Is it kind of the same thing that you've been mentioning about like easing in? If we're kind of, we haven't really, traveled, like, again, we have like an office job or whatever, and, we have a very, sedentary lifestyle. Is that kind of the same thing, that we just need to take it slow to build our endurance to go on these kind of hikes and cycling trips that you mentioned about?
Yeah, that definitely helps, obviously. If you try and get in, you have like a regular workout routine, if you're into running, or even just something like doing, start off doing 20 push-ups every morning and 20 sit-ups, and like kind of build up, just like something very simple like that, or doing like regular yoga, because having your body more conditioned will give you more confidence when you go out to do these kind of adventure travels. You don't necessarily have to do it. Like, we got 2 friends who rode bicycles from Berlin to Bali, and they'd never ridden a bicycle more than 20 minutes in their lives. They literally just landed in Berlin, bought these bicycles, and went, let's go. So of course, for the first month it sucked for them, but then they build up the fitness and everything. But that's not for everyone, and I totally understand that. So yeah, like you said, exercising, running, building up your cardio, that will give you, besides just being great for you anyway and being really good to be healthy, it's also really good to build up your confidence, so that if you're going to go and tackle a 30-kilometer hike, you mentally know that you can do it. It's, you haven't just walked to the local supermarket and back twice a week, for the last 10 years, and then you're landing in Nepal trying to, trek for 28 days. So if you can build up a bit of a workout routine, that'll definitely help get into adventure travel. And especially like really intense adventure stuff like climbing and mountaineering and stuff, you really need to be conditioned for that. It's not something you can just kind of fall into and land somewhere and get right into it. So yeah, definitely recommend kind of working out some kind of routine. Don't have to run a marathon, but run a few mile and try and get into it.
Sweet, yeah. I mean, this is definitely motivating and inspiring, and I don't want to get off topic, but maybe I watch too many kind of scary movies. There's that Liam Neeson movie called Taken, and kind of like that other movie called Hostel, where like those backpackers get stuck in that hostel, and then stuff hits the fan. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, like, you mentioned that we end up on we land in Vietnam, we have no game plan, and we're just going to get these bikes. Can you talk to us just kind of like about like, safety and, like how whenever we're traveling to be responsible and make sure we don't get stuck in a situation, like especially if we've never been overseas or in a country. Can you just kind of share some, tidbits we can do to be safe?
It's definitely nerve-wracking the first time you land in the country and you've got no idea what it's going to be like. I mean, no matter how much research you do on a place, when you get there, it's going to be different. You can watch movies, you can read books, you can scroll the internet, but you're not going to know what Vietnam is like until you're in Vietnam. And that can be quite scary for a lot of people. Once you've been traveling for a while, and like I, for example, would happily fly into anywhere and really not be too concerned about a lot. But if you've never traveled before and you're looking for kind of tips, like, okay, I've just booked my ticket to, Peru. I'm really scared. I don't know Spanish. I don't know anything about the culture. I don't know the customs. I mean, besides doing research before you go, it's really just a matter of like trusting your instincts and really knowing that you'll be fine. And like for the most part, 99% of people travel the world and do all these kind of crazy things and go to these cool places, and they never have a major issue. The instances of violent encounters when you travel is so minimal, it's not even worth thinking about. Like in Australia, you're more likely to be physically hurt on a Friday night going out for drinks with your friends than you are to be hurt traveling across, Iran or anything like that. So it's trying to condition your mentality to just know, like, it's basically assuming that everything's going to be okay. And then once you're there, trust your instincts. If you have a bad feeling about a circumstance, walk away. Or a situation, walk away. If you're chatting to someone and you're like, oh, I don't really know if this person's like the right kind of guy and he might be trying to scam me, like, just move away from that situation. It's not something that you just have to kind of accept. If you feel in danger, remove yourself from the situation. And so if you can go to places that you can find out a lot more information about, that's not really kind of ruined by media attitudes and media portrayal, then you'll have a great time. Like Mexico, for example, like it's people hear so much about cartels in northern Mexico, and like I'm not going to say it's not a dangerous place, but there are so many other parts of Mexico that are completely fine. Like if you go to the south of Mexico, like it's incredible. It's beautiful. The people are awesome. The food's great. So it's also kind of separating that media side of things to what it's actually like on the ground. But yeah, trusting your instincts is really just the main one, I guess, if you're a bit concerned about safety. Not exactly sure if that answers your question. It's a bit of an interesting one. You really just have to kind of trust that you're going to be okay and not really worry too much.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel that kind of makes sense. If you're always being in your mind about safety and stuff, then you might be attracting that negative stuff. That if you were just going with the flow and being happy, that that wouldn't necessarily come up. But it's always good to just make sure, like, yeah, if you said you have to trust your inside and your instinct, and if something is making you uncomfortable, just get out and make sure that you have your family and friends know where you are and they have your number, and just like if you don't hear back from me in 2 hours, try to look for me or something along those lines.
That's the great thing with the world that we live in today, with internet and with phones. You got GPS, so you're never exactly unsure of where you are. Like, you're so well connected in the world now that you really don't have to worry too much. Like, you go back 20 years and people, or longer. We've got friends who did the old hippie trail from London to Thailand and stuff back in the 60s and 70s, and it was literally like, okay, I'm leaving today, Mum and Dad. I'll drop you a letter in like 6 months' time when I get to India, and then you're on your own. These days, it's not like that. You can, it's crazy. Like you can go to Thailand and have faster Wi-Fi than you'll have in the States or in Australia, and everywhere. You can buy local SIM cards for next to nothing in most places, and you'll have data. So if you're ever in this weird situation, you can always Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever. You can get in touch with someone. You can always have this kind of safety net there. GPS you never lost. You don't even need maps anymore. You can get off a bus, check your phone, and go I know exactly where I am. I'm not lost, and you can find a hotel. You can Google, where's the closest hotel? Where's a police station if you're worried? And the way the world is now, you don't have to be worried. You can call your parents and say, look, I'm sketched out, or if you get a horrible situation, if you get robbed and you have everything stolen from you, you don't have a passport, you don't have anything, which for most travelers is one of the scariest things that they can imagine. I'm stuck in a foreign country with nothing. All I've got is the shirt on my back. It's really not that bad of a situation. It sucks at the time, but you're not going to be homeless. You're not going to be, you're not going to all of a sudden be roughing it with kids on the street. You just go to your embassy. Everything's online now. Everything can get fixed. Your parents can wire you money, or your friends, or you can get an emergency bank loan, all kinds of things. The world is so small now with the internet that the danger element's removed from so many places. Of course, if you're going to go to the Congo, that's a different story. But that's when we're talking about advanced adventure travel, and that's where you've already done things to prepare yourself for that. So yeah, you really you said a couple of hours and call your parents, and everything will be sweet again. You can check back in with your friends, your girlfriend back home, or whatever, and kind of really fix that situation without having to do anything. So it's quite good.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, it's you make it sound like it's the perfect time to live in this era. So you were talking about there isn't really any limitations when it comes to adventure traveling. You mentioned that your friends they weren't necessarily in the greatest shape, but they got on those bikes. Is there a time though you would recommend that adventure traveling shouldn't be pursued, or is it really game on?
It's an interesting thing because when you start getting into this level, I don't consider myself to be the ultimate adventure traveler by any means at all. There are people out there that you and I have never heard of who are doing things that would blow your mind. We met a guy in Kyrgyzstan who had been walking for 25 years. Doesn't keep a blog, doesn't have a diary, doesn't write a book, or he's been walking. And you meet these people, and to me that's the most adventurous traveler ever. He's just been walking through everywhere, but adventure travel is it's a kind of thing where if you are actively seeking out dangerous places just for bragging rights, and I got a few friends who think about this, they're I want to go to Syria just because it's dangerous. It's to me that's not adventure travel, that's just kind of being stupid. Unless you're a journalist and you're trying to really document a place, or if you're trying to do some kind of good humanitarian work, there are places that I would say don't consider going there for adventure travel. You should stay away from these kind of places, and also knowing your limitations. If you can work your way up, your body can handle a lot of crazy things, but I, for example, wouldn't try to summit K2 in my condition. I would need a lot more training and everything. I wouldn't try to climb in Yosemite without learning a few things first. So it is about, there's a difference between doing things that is just going to be complicated and take a lot of thinking and trying to navigate certain situations, and then being just outside your limitations. So you have to be honest with yourself too. Go look, I would really like to ride a motorbike over Ladakh, over the Himalaya or something, but I'm a horrible motorbike rider. I should probably build myself up to that first. So I think there are limitations and times where you should step back from adventure travel and really kind of think about, is it worth it? What are you like? Are you doing something that's dangerous just for the sake of being dangerous? Which, people have that adrenaline rush. They're like, oh, I really want to be scared. I really want to, feel like I'm on the edge of death so I can feel life. Which I understand. Nothing wrong with that, but I think there are times when you should step back and go, look, it's just not worth going to these certain places or doing this certain activity or adventure that I've got in mind, just because it's basically, if you get to a point where it's like, this is dangerous where I could probably die or I could probably put myself in a really, really messed up situation, it's probably not worth pursuing unless you really experienced or you really thought out all the consequences.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's nothing wrong, as you mentioned earlier, like just building yourself up slow and steady, wins the race. And, you can just do some self, motivation and just self-discipline and self-help to get you to where you are. So let's talk a little bit about, a budget. Let's say that, just talking about traveling on a budget, can you just tell us some places where if we don't necessarily have the means of, to go to like Southeast Asia for like 2 or 3 months. You mentioned like, a couple local spots. Can you just kind of talk to us and give us some information on, how we can save money or how much money do we need to like really have a good travel trip?
You really don't need a lot of money to have a great travel trip. It all comes down to attitude, I feel like, and being okay to go without in some certain situations. If you are happy not staying in luxury hotels and taking taxis and renting cars everywhere you go, if you're happy with just like public buses, couch surfing, if you're into hitchhiking or if you want to get into hitchhiking, if you're okay with those kind of things, you can travel for a really low amount of money. Alicia and I used to travel when we were riding motorbikes around Vietnam. Our average was about $10 a day for like each. And that was staying in hotels, that was on our motorbikes, that was eating, 3 meals a day, having a beer at the end of the day. So it can be possible to be cheap if you don't have like a high standard of what you're going to eat and where you want to stay. If you want to do it local and you want to do it on a budget, and if you have a longer period, like more than like a week or two, if you got a month, for example, do a bicycle trip because once you got the bike, your transport's free. And if you're riding a bike, you are more than likely going to be camping a lot. And if you're cool with camping, well, then your accommodation's free. And then once you're doing that, you're not near a restaurant, so you're going to have to be into cooking. And once you're cooking your own food, that's really, really cheap. So if you can do like a month, and this can be in the States as well. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I got to fly to China to ride a bicycle to do it really cheap. You can do it in the States or Canada or Australia or New Zealand. You can do a very, very, very cheap trip if you're just willing to like hitchhike, ride a bike, cook your own meals. Couch surfing is a great way to keep your costs down. Staying in hostels, if you've got a slightly higher budget, depending on where you're going, like hostels in Asia and Central America and South America are dirt cheap, but hostels in the States and Canada and Australia aren't so cheap. But if your budget's a little bit higher, you don't mind sleeping in dorm rooms, then you can do that as well. Yeah, if you're not into couch surfing, you should definitely get into couch surfing. That's not only a great way to keep your costs down, but also to meet local people, have these incredible local interactions, find out about unique parts of towns and cities, and have a really good insider look into cultures. With the plus side that it will keep your costs down.
Wow, I mean, three meals, a beer at the end of the day, like sign me up for $10. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
no, it was incredible. Yeah, it was amazing.
So
Vietnam's a super cheap place.
Right. You mentioned hitchhiking. Have you done that before?
Yeah, we've done a bunch of hitchhiking. We've hitchhiked around Canada, Vietnam. No, we didn't hitchhike in Vietnam. Sorry, hitchhiked in China, Tibet, Mongolia, Turkey, Bulgaria. Where else? A few places. I've hitchhiked in Australia.
Wow.
The hitchhiking in Tibet, I think that was like almost 2 weeks, chopping and changing between hitchhiking and taking a bus every now and then, but primarily hitchhiking. 7 days across northern Mongolia, hitchhiking. I've done a little bit of it. It's great.
What would you say was the ratio of people that would pick you guys up? Did you have to like stand for like a couple hours until somebody would, give you guys a ride, or?
Oh, really depends. like in Tibet, I don't think we had to wait any more than maybe 30 minutes or 45 minutes, maybe. Hitchhiking in Canada, I think the longest we had to wait was about 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
We've been very lucky. Like Turkey, literally, we'd stick our thumb out, and the first car that drove past would pick us up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of the time too, the people like in China, they'd ask for money every now and then, which is just whatever. It's how it is, and you explain your situation, and they're usually okay with it. But most of the time, the people that pick you up hitchhiking, either like they've hitchhiked before in their time when they were younger or whatever, and so they're just really excited to like give someone a ride and have a chat, and God, I used to hitchhike back in the 80s or something, and like it's a great way to meet people. And yeah, I never had to wait too long. I know we picked up a hitchhiker in Canada twice, 2 days in a row, and we dropped him. This one poor guy, we dropped him off at one point in the morning. Alicia and I, we went another way with our van, and we came back like 36 hours later, and he was still standing in the same spot. No one had picked him up.
Wow.
So we gave him another ride to the next town. So it's not always like super easy, but we've been very lucky. We never had to wait too long.
Well, no, that's super cool. So can you talk a little bit about if we are going to go overseas somewhere, do we need travelers insurance, and do we need to get vaccinated, or is that just kind of like hoopla that you hear like in the media? You mentioned was a good part that how do we maintain like what we see in the media versus like how it is really when we get to our destination?
This is an interesting one because I know for a lot of adventure travelers, well, a lot of, I'd say more adventure like backpackers or people who travel long term, they might say don't get travel insurance. Personally, we say yes, you need travel insurance. And we've always said if you can't afford travel insurance, you can't afford to travel. And I'll give you an example. One of our roommates from Canada, who's a good friend of ours, an Australian guy, he was rock climbing in Canada. He fell and broke his femur. Had to get airlifted out of there, ended up in hospital for 6 weeks, blood infection, all kinds of gnarly stuff. And he didn't have travel insurance, and his bill came to $150,000. Now, he couldn't pay it. He ended up, I don't recommend this, but he ended up skipping the country. And he went back to Australia. He can never go to North America again because they're tracking him down. They're trying to get this money back. So for the rest of his life, he's our age, he's 30. For the next 40 or so years, he can't go back to North America. And he loves it there. He's spent years there. So that's just one example. Alicia was just in hospital about 2 months ago now with an intestine infection. In Thailand, you think it's super cheap. No, we took her to a decent medical place to get checked out. She got put into hospital, hooked up to an IV. It came to $1,000 just for a few hours being in an IV. Our travel insurance covered that. And so we always say that, yes, you need travel insurance. And people might go, oh, no, it's only for if I have my laptop stolen, I don't travel with a laptop. It's not true. If you need medical evacuation, especially if you're an adventure traveler and you're doing these, you're hiking and you trip and you break your ankle and you're in the middle of nowhere and, you need hospital care, you need to get evacuated. Like you really need travel insurance. We've written a whole article on our website about, do you actually need travel insurance? And we've given examples of people we know personally who have not had travel insurance and had to go through these horrible situations where they're dealing with lawyers and all kinds of things because they have these rising medical costs and they can't afford to pay it. They're traveling with like $2,000 in the bank, and next thing you know, they've broken their arm or whatever, and surprise, surprise, the hospital bill's already like $20,000 and they can't afford to pay it. What do? They're stuck. A lot of these times, the hospitals will take your passport off you if you can't pay. You can't leave. You're stuck there. So yeah, 100% you need travel insurance. Vaccinations is a different one. I think you need the bare minimum. Hep A, Hep B, tetanus. Those are the ones that you need. If we went to our travel doctor before we went on our current trip, like 2.5 years in Asia, and we were chatting to him, and he was like, yeah, you need this vaccination, you need that vaccination, blah, 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 blah. And everyone's up to their own thing. If you're the kind of person who's a bit worried about vaccinations and you're getting sick, then, by all means, if you've got the money to do it as well, get the vaccinations. We've been told by a bunch of different people, I'm not a medical expert, by the way, but been told a bunch of different people, a lot of these vaccinations you really just don't need. Yellow fever is the one that actually 100% you do need. A lot of countries won't let you in with if you haven't got your yellow fever vaccination. You get a little booklet as well that proves that you've had it. So yeah, there's a few vaccinations you need, but I wouldn't go out and get every single one that's recommended to you. Malaria tablets, if you're traveling long term and you're not going, deep into the Congo or something like that, no, you probably don't need malaria tablets. If you're only going for like a week or 2 weeks and you're going to a tropical place that has malaria, then yeah, it might be worth taking. But if you're going for a long trip, it's usually not worth doing. But I'll say, seek medical advice. Don't just listen to me and go, well, Jared said I don't need to get vaccinations, so I'm going to head off to Kenya and just wing it. But yeah, get medical advice. But yeah, personally, we've only got the bare minimum: Hep A, Hep B, yellow fever, and tetanus.
Yeah, sweet. No, yeah, this is definitely great feedback, and let's just keep it going here. I want to ask you, what's common, the biggest mistake that you see a lot of adventure travelers do, and what can we do to make sure that we don't do that same mistake?
I think it'd just be not trusting your instincts, getting too complacent and getting too comfortable in situations, which is something that Alicia and I have both been victims of ourselves. And we're lucky we've never had anything major happen, but being in like a certain country, which might not necessarily be the safest. Honduras, for example, we spent a lot of time in Honduras, which at the time had the highest murder rate. I think it still does, the highest murder rate in the world. Super dangerous country and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not taking anything away from it. It can be dangerous if you go to these particular places, that you really got no need to go to. And we were there for so long, we could speak a bit of Spanish, and we've learned all the scams and everything, that we ended up just getting comfortable. So we were taking more and more risks, like little things, like we'd go to the ATM, withdraw our cash, and then normally we'd go home, we'd separate our cash, we'd lock it up and everything, and then we'd go back out and okay, we haven't got the cash. But after a little while, 3 months in Central America, 4 months, 5 months, we've never been robbed yet. So next thing you know, instead of going home, we'd just go out for the day with the cash in our pocket. And that's the kind of thing, again, we never got robbed in Central America. We were there for 8 months and had a great time. But people get comfortable, and that can be dangerous. And Asia's been a great example for us now, because Asia's a very, very safe place. You wouldn't believe how safe Asia is. It's insanely... it's an incredible place. There's almost nothing to be scared of, really, compared to a lot of other places. But we're going to South America at the end of the year. So we're going to have to really go back to this mindset of, okay, I need to step back, not be so comfortable, not be so complacent with things, and we need to start doing more and more. Listening to our instincts more as well. And that's something that I think travelers in general do. Adventure travelers, it's just they start pushing the limits more and more and more. You see that with base jumpers and wingsuits and everything, and that comes down to adrenaline and mixed with adventure as well. You get hikers who go further and further and deeper, or you get solo kayakers who want to do bigger waterfall drops, and the adrenaline starts it can cloud your judgment when it comes to dangerous situations. So yeah, I think it's just listening to your instincts in general is the big mistake that people kind of drop off at when they're doing more and more adventure travel and just travel in general.
Right, yeah, no, I think that's awesome, especially if you are kind of what you mentioned from America or Canada or Australia, and it's very safe back home, and you haven't really gone traveling. You gotta stay on your feet, and you don't want to get comfortable. So I think that's awesome. And let's say that can you just talk to us about traveling via, if we're going solo compared to if we're traveling with our significant other or a group of friends? How is how can we get the most out of our adventure traveling?
Yeah, it's definitely different. Traveling on your own and traveling with your fiance, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever, or traveling with friends, it's a completely different way of traveling. If you're on your own, and if you're like me and you're extroverted, then it's no problem. You meet people, you chat in hostels, you'll chat to people at bus stations, and you'll chat to locals. You don't mind making a fool of yourself, and so you'll be able to meet people and have these kind of form friendships and have these cool interactions with people as you go. But if you're traveling on your own and you're introverted and you aren't the kind of person that can just walk up to a stranger and be like, "Hi, how are you? Where are you from? Let's sit down and have a beer." Then traveling solo, it can get lonely. It can get it can get to a point where you feel like you're not getting a lot out of your trip, except for obviously seeing amazing things and learning a lot about history. But you might feel like you're lacking in getting into these kind of cool situations. So a great way if you're traveling on your own is learn a little bit of the local language and really get a phrase book. It's a great way. Play with kids because kids are always easy to break the ice. If you see a young kid, go up, give them a high five, do these kind of things, and that will hopefully lead you into these cool situations. Stay in hostels as well. If you're not the kind of person who's overly excited and wanting to meet a lot of people, or maybe you are but you just don't know how to go about it. If you stay in a dorm room and someone else walks into your dorm room, instantly you have a reason to talk to them. It's like, oh hi, we're sharing a room together, and you're forced into the situation where you'll start talking to people and friendships will form, and that's with other travelers. And then same again, if you're somewhere like Asia and you're taking a local bus and you're on your own, you are gonna have great moments with locals because they're just curious and they just want to chat to you. And so being on your own, I feel, can also lead to a lot more really great interactions, good ways of getting a lot out of your travel compared to traveling as a duo or a trio or more. And the reason is, if you're traveling with your significant other or a good friend, you spend a lot of time with that person and you're comfortable with them. And I highly recommend it. It's incredible. Traveling with Alicia, my fiance, it's amazing because we bounce off each other, we look after each other. But on the flip side, you can also alienate yourselves a bit because if there's a solo traveler looking to meet another person, it's easier to approach someone who's on their own than approach someone who's obviously in a good friendship or a relationship because they've got that comfort around them, that security blanket, and the other person doesn't. And so a good way, again, if you both in a couple of both friends are extroverted, then it's fine. You'll chat to everyone. But if you're both kind of introverted people, you can lock yourself away. But a great way, if you really want to get out of that, is just do things differently or separately. So maybe I feel like having a beer, but my significant other doesn't. It's okay. I'll just go to the bar on my own, and it's okay. And it might when you're home in Australia or in the States or something, and you're going to a movie theater on your own, or you're going out to a restaurant on your own. Yeah, you might think people are looking at you like, oh, that guy's a bit weird. What's he doing on his own? Why is he having a beer by himself? But when you're traveling, it's the opposite. People do it all the time. It's like, I feel like a beer, I'm going to go have a beer. I feel like a coffee, I'm going to go have a coffee. And you don't. It doesn't matter if no one's around. So if you're traveling in a partner, in a relationship, or with your friends, and you're finding that you're not getting a lot out of local interactions with people, just do things differently or at different times and separately. So be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get a coffee while you do your laundry, or I'm going to do this. So separate a little bit. And I think that's a really great way of putting yourselves in these situations again where you may have a chance to meet locals or you may have a chance to meet other travelers. If you want to meet a lot more locals, and couch surfing as well, whether you're a couple or whether you're 3 friends or whether you're just on your own, is a great way to meet people. And taking local transport as well. The amount of people we've met taking buses and hitchhiking and stuff is just ridiculous, compared to if you take a taxi anywhere. So yeah, I think there's different ways you can get a lot out of your travels.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you were mentioning at the beginning of this talk about how we don't necessarily need to take a few weeks away. We can just kind of do a day or two trip. But ideally, if we did have time to our side, can you just kind of talk to us about is there an ideal good length, days, weeks, months, to really plan our travel trip or adventure travel trip?
Well, there's no ideal amount. It really depends on each and every person. Alicia and I are coming up to 8 years on the road, and the last 2.5 years has been non-stop. We haven't been anywhere for more. Now we're in Romania, and we've rented an apartment for 3 weeks. This is the longest we've been in one place in 2.5 years. And that's not for everybody. As we're getting older, we're realizing it's not so much for us as full-time trips. So if it doesn't have to be, there's no set time. It doesn't have to be 2 days, 5 days, a month, or whatever. It can be whatever you're comfortable with. If you're easing into it, I definitely recommend just doing something like a week to start with. Or again, if you've got a little bit of time off work, a weekend, 3 days, go to a hiking trip or a rafting trip or something. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks is starting to get really cool because you'll have a little bit more time to travel slowly and really kind of spend a bit more time in each place. And then if you're planning a big trip and you're like, okay, I'm going to do a round the world trip in 1 year, then like 1 year is a huge amount of time. No matter who you are and how long you've been traveling, a year is still an incredible amount of time. So if you can buy yourself a year to travel and pick different places, I mean, you can do a year in Southeast Asia, or you can do a year in South America, or you can break it up and do like I'm doing 3 months in Australia, New Zealand, 3 months in Southeast Asia, 3 months in Europe, and you can really experience these cool things. So I feel like a year, that's why it's called a gap year as well, and it's becoming more and more popular for people, especially in the United States as well. Like I think it's something that needs to be done by people is take this gap year. In Australia, it's been part of our culture for years and years and years. You finish high school, you go traveling. And we travel. And the reason that Australians travel for so long is it's just part of what we like. It's normal for us. It's like, I'm going traveling for a year. People don't bat an eyelid. I know in the United States, if you're like, I'm quitting my job and going traveling for a year, people kind of like, you're doing what? Have you thought about your future? Like, it's like, I promise you, if you quit your job and travel for a year, you're going to be okay. The world is not going to implode. You're going to be able to go home and you're going to get another job. Like I feel like a year is like a very. It's a wholesome number. It's really, really cool. If you can't afford a year, that's cool. Do a month, 3 weeks, a month, and really just kind of pick one area. Don't try and squeeze too much into 1 month. Don't go, okay, I've got 4 weeks, I'm going to go to 8 different countries. Pick like 1 or 2 countries or 1 or 2 areas and really focus on that. But yeah, there is no set number for travel, unfortunately. And people have been traveling for 30, 40 years non-stop and even longer. And you get people who travel for a month and go, that's enough. I tried it, I didn't like it, which is cool. And I'm going to go back to, their normal life, which again, that's fine as well. So.
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to talk to you about, planning our activities, especially like, in the summertime compared to the winter. Is there like, what is the best, plan of action to kind of plan our activities? Or is it what you said, just to kind of go with the flow and be spontaneous? Or, if you want to go on a bike trip, obviously, probably start it earlier in the day because of the heat. Can you just kind of, dabble into that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're into and what you want to do. If you're doing like a really big cross-country skiing trip, across Norway or something, then obviously you're going to have to go in winter and you're going to have to do it during daylight hours and there's all these different things. So it really depends on the activity you want to do. If you want to get into cycling, start early in the morning so you can finish up in the heat before the heat of the day really kicks in, or you can have a break and then you've already gained some time. Like with planning, we really believe in being spontaneous and being open to changes. And when we bought our motorbikes, we were in Laos. We Googled buying motorbikes because we met a guy who'd done it across Mongolia, and we thought, oh, that sounds like a cool trip. We found 2 motorbikes for sale online. The next morning, we bought them. But we didn't plan it. We didn't plan on buying motorbikes and traveling Southeast Asia for 10 months on them, but that's what we did. And then our plans instantly changed, and we had to adapt as we went. So being spontaneous and being open to those kind of things, hearing these cool ideas, like you might cruise into a country like Tajikistan with no plans, meet someone in a hostel who's like, oh, I'm doing a 3-week hike over the Pamir Mountains. Do you want to come? It's like, oh, well, no, I've got like every hotel booked and blah, blah, I can't go. But if you're spontaneous, if you're flexible, then you can take on these really cool adventures that come your way. I think it's something that if you can wing it and be spontaneous, it's great. Obviously, if you want to do something particular like summit a mountain, then you're going to have to start planning ahead of time, and you're really going to have to wait for weather windows, and you're going to have to do certain things. If you want to sail across the Pacific, you want to get a sailboat and sail to Australia, for example, or sail to the Pacific Islands, then you're going to have to start planning. You have to start watching out for hurricane seasons and that kind of thing. So it really depends on what your idea of your adventure is and how you go about planning it and timing as well.
Right. No, I like that. What you said, you just kind of, being adapted to the environment and just kind of going with the flow. You never, that always ends up in those best traveling experiences. So, kind of like on a closing note, what's the last kind of piece of advice? Like if you were going to, all your adventure traveling that you've done over the years, if you were going to start all over again, knowing what you know now, is there something that you would tackle a little bit differently, or just, if we're going to go on our first adventure trip, what's if somebody is going to take one thing from this talk, what is it that they can put in their own traveling?
Um, Personally, if I was to do this all again, I'd do it sooner. I wouldn't, like, I'm 29 now and I've been traveling since I was 20. I would have tried to do it sooner, and I would have tried to get more into things quickly, like as I became interested in them the first time I heard about them. One thing to take away from it, I guess, is just don't be scared and live your life. It doesn't matter what you want to do. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be adventure travel, but because that's what this talk is about, and that's what my passion is. So if you want to hike the Annapurna circuit, if you want to ride a motorbike to Ushuaia, if you want to sail across the Atlantic, just do it. Do it. And if you fail, that's fine. It doesn't matter. At least you tried. And there are things that I've tried to do which I failed at. I tried to get into rock climbing. Turns out I'm a crappy rock climber. That's okay. At least I tried it. It doesn't matter that I'm bad at it. And there's no harm in trying something and failing. The real harm is not trying something, not doing what you want to do, not buying a bicycle and riding across the states, not visiting all 50 states because you're like, oh no, but what if I don't get to the last one or whatever? Like, you just do it and don't be afraid of failure. You'll be thankful that you've lived your life and at least tried something than not doing what you want to do just in case it doesn't work out. Be open to having crappy experiences as well, because crappy experiences are part of it, and that's what will help shape you. So I think just don't have fear, don't be afraid of failing, just do what you want to do and do it now. Don't wait till next year, don't wait till 10 years time, don't wait till you're retired, don't wait till the kids are grown up. Like, if you have something that you want to do everything in your power to start making it happen today.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome, and I really like that, what you said, do it now. For the viewers that are, maybe a little bit older, 40, 50, 60 years old, I don't want them to get turned off, if they haven't traveled, but they're like, 55, there's no better time to do it now. And I'm sure like there are a lot of people that do like Mount Everest and a lot of those crazy adventure traveling, and they look great doing it at that age. So what are you mentioned that you're in Romania. Can you just kind of tell us what are we going to expect to see from you in the future? What are you working on, and what's the next trip that you guys have planned?
So up until we're in Europe, so far nothing's set in concrete with us. We're very lucid. We're very open to change, because for us in our job, working as travel bloggers and travel writers and photographers, like, change happens every other day. We get all these kind of crazy opportunities. But right now we are in Romania until next week. Then we're off to Czech Republic to go to a music festival. We're both huge fans of music festivals, so we're going to go to one of those. And then after that, we're going to Turkey again for a conference, and then we're going to South America. And we're going to South America, and we're going to go do some hiking all through Patagonia. We're going to go explore some cool things there, do some whitewater rafting. We're going to try and hitch a ride to Antarctica. We're going to see how that works. We're going to spend a bunch of time in Ushuaia and see if we can manage to get onto a cruise ship or a research vessel to go out to Antarctica.
Lastly, where can the viewers learn more about you and all that kind of stuff?
Go to our blog, nomatosaurus.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well. You'll find all our... Oh, and we're on Snapchat too. We're just getting into Snapchat, where we're kind of doing these snaps all around the.
I'll have all the links on the page. But what's your Snapchat also?
Nomatosaurus. Everything is Nomatosaurus for us. If you Google that, or if you look up our names, Jared Slay and Alicia Bradford, we also freelance for a whole bunch of different companies as well. You can find our stories all over the internet. So yeah, nomatosaurus.com is the best place to start. And feel free to drop us a message about anything. We reply to every email and every comment we get. It might take us a while because we get quite a lot these days, but we're always happy to chat to people. And if anyone's got any questions about how they can get into this kind of lifestyle themselves, or they want to learn more about adventure travel or learn more about us or just anything in general, drop us a message and we promise we'll get back to everyone.
Sweet. Awesome. Guys, if you're looking to plan your next adventure trip, definitely check out their blog, nomadasource.com. They have a lot of great content. I'll have all the links here on this page. And Jared, I just wanted to say again, thanks for taking time and to be a part with us and sharing this valuable information.
Thank you so much. We're really stoked to be a part of it.